I could hear him in my head. We're talking, but not the way I'm talking to you. And I hear him in my head, and I could hear him telling me, I love you, proud of you, and all these things. It was very emotional, still emotional for me. And I remember saying to him, Dad, I love you, and all those things, right? Things that should happen so normally in life. And here I am, dead, finally doing something I should have done in life. And the regret for not doing it was finally being alleviated, being removed.
Today, I'd like to welcome a very special guest, Jose Hernandez. Welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here, Jose.
Thank you, Christina. I'm very honored to be here.
Yes, I've seen you on so many podcasts, and I've also seen you on the Netflix series Surviving Death. And so I'm actually just super tickled to be able to have a conversation with you. And so many things we talked about prior to pressing record have just, opened up my heart even before we got started. So let's just get started with your journey. If you want to just share about your NDE and anything that comes alive around that.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we're going to start at the beginning then.
Okay.
So I was at work one day running some electrical lines in Miami, in Florida. It was Wednesday night. Next day was Thanksgiving. So we were looking forward to that 4-day weekend and that Black Friday, the whole Thanksgiving excitement. And we were running behind schedule. So we wanted to find a way that we could speed it up, so save time. In other words, we're thinking, how can we save some time? So we decided, because we're very brilliant, that instead of bringing the bucket truck up and down, I'll stay up and we'll move from one point to the other and move back and forth like that. So, I mean, my experience wasn't that I got electrocuted or anything like that. It was a lot more benign. It was the driver was looking up at me and noticed that there was a little stump, small tree, and he just bumped into the side of it, and I hit the bucket, and I broke the bucket on my right side, and I wound up in the ER. Go to the ER, they tape you up. They gave me some pain meds and something for the inflammation. They said, go home, and you're going to be fine. It's going to take a few weeks, and you'll heal. I went home and I had taken that pill, and the medication that was in there was a painkiller, but it was also ibuprofen, something that everybody takes. Turns out I was allergic to the ibuprofen component. So it became incredibly difficult to breathe. So I pick up a phone and I call them up and I say, hey guys, I just left there and I'm really struggling to breathe. Is that normal? And they said, yeah, you're all taped up. You can't take a deep breath anyway. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And because I'm very science-minded to begin with, I'm saying, well, they're doctors. They know what they're talking about. And I embraced it. So I kept taking the medication, and I slowly began to get worse and worse and worse. And it wasn't until like January 5th that I finally was feeling bad enough that I said I have to go to the hospital. I can't breathe. I was already sitting down on the couch. I couldn't lay down anymore. I mean, they saw me a few times and they were wondering why I wasn't healing. But they just kept on, well, we just got to wait for those anti-inflammatories to kick in. There's a lot of inflammation, stuff like that going on. And so I kept taking it. January 5th, it was about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I finally said to my wife at the time, I said, look, I can't breathe. Take me to the hospital. And she and my son drove me to the hospital. Got there about 40 minutes later. It must have been almost midnight by the time I get there. And they see me and they decide they're going to admit me to the hospital. And of course, I'm looking at my wife and my son, and I said, look, I'm going to be fine. Don't worry about it. I'll probably be home tomorrow, so go ahead and go ahead home. and you know, I'll be fine. And you can always call and whatever. So they wound up leaving about 12 midnight, and then the nurse comes in the room. I'm going to say it's about 1 o'clock now. She comes in the room and she says, "Jose, if you need anything, just push that little button that's there, and I'll come as soon as I can." But the thing is, the minute she told me to push that button, I'm already in my head thinking, "Oh gosh, I should push this button right now. I'll tell her to stay," because I felt that bad. Yeah. And but I didn't. I'm thinking, "Oh, stop being such a baby. You're a guy. You're a man. You know, you can't stop this. You know, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be okay. Just relax. You're always okay. Nothing ever happens." And that was till that day. That's a fact. And we always overcome things, right? And we think we're bulletproof. I'm like, I'm gonna be fine anyway. Stop being a big baby. And that's, you know, that's not the way you grew up. And then not till like an hour later, 45 minutes later, that I finally say, "I can't take it anymore. I'm gonna push this button." And I push the button. Push the button, and there's a clock right over the door. And I'm looking right at the door and the clock. That's where the bed is facing. So I'm seeing this thing tick, 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 and it took like forever for that moment. It was only 1 minute that it took for the nurse to get there, and it felt like hours to me. Yeah. And she finally gets there, and she just opened that door, looked at me, and she just hit the code blue on the wall. And I'm looking at her like, no, she just didn't do that. There's no way she did that. Right? Because I know what it means. And I'm thinking, no, that can't be possible. And then the next thing I know, the room is getting filled with people. So the crash team is running in. Now, I'm going to share with you what I felt emotionally as well as physically. These few minutes. And it was only a few minutes. It only took about 5 minutes by the time I actually moved on. So first thing that happens is all these people are running in the room. And the first sense that I have as a man is shame. And why shame? Because I have a sheet that I'm holding on so tight so they don't strip me. And I was so weak that I couldn't hold it. They just pulled it off of me. They lift me up, put me on a board, strip me down, and then they start doing their job. They're actually trying to save my life. But what I was feeling was shame because I couldn't hold on to that sheet. I felt so helpless and so weak. And it just was a very powerful emotion of how helpless I was. And I've never been in a situation where I was helpless like that, where I couldn't stop something from happening to me that I didn't want. And next thing that happened is they start working on me, and I'm not even thinking about them working on me. I'm just caught up. I'm internalized. I'm like inside in me. Then I'm thinking, I started thinking about my kids, and I said, what if this is real? What's going to happen to them? If something happens to me, they're not ready. Nothing's prepared, nothing's ready. I didn't leave a will. I didn't have anything in place. And I felt really guilty. Oh gosh, here I am, and nothing's ready for them. I haven't said anything, I wasn't something I ever thought about. I never been in that situation. So I said, and all those emotions started to kind of churn in, and then I felt a tremendous lump in right here, my chest. And that was emotion. And the emotion was, what if this is real? And what if I'm going to pass? What if I'm going to die here? I can't say goodbye. I can't see them. I didn't say goodbye to any of them. I just sent my wife and my son off like, okay, go ahead. I'm going to be fine. Without any thought. What if, and here I am now facing this. There's nobody that I love here. I'm all alone. And I felt this tremendous loneliness. Now, the room was filled with people, but I felt completely alone. And I just feel like I'm falling at this point. I if you visualize it, you can visualize yourself falling. So you finally hit bottom. It took so long to hit bottom. That's how low I felt, like I'm going to lose everything. And I thought about it just like that. I'm not only going to lose my family and everyone I love, I'm going to lose everybody I know. Everything I learned in my life is just going to disappear, and everything's going to just be lost forever. And then I start thinking about so fear begins to knock on the door. That's what I'm thinking about, fear. And then I grew up an atheist. So my mother was Catholic, my father was First Nation. Very different beliefs. My father's belief is look outside, creators everywhere. Everything is creator. My mother is go to church and you kneel and you pray to God, and there you'll find Jesus and God and Christ, right? And I was kind of like more in the middle, and I said, no, too much conflict there. Maybe God isn't real. Maybe it's just something that we do so that we can ease our fear. So we're not afraid of dying. So we're not, and then I also thought of it as a business, savvy. So it's a business. And anyway, I chose science. Math was my religion and science. But I quickly found at this moment that math and science were disintegrating. They were just coming apart. Couldn't hang my hat on that. There was nothing to hold on to. So as a scientist, I started thinking, what's going to happen to me? And this is what created the fear. I'm going to get turned off like a light. If somebody's going to hit a switch, something, shut me off, and I'll turn to nothing. I am nothing. And the thought of becoming nothing just scared the heck out of me. It was terrifying, thinking, okay, become nothing, turned off like a light. It's going to turn into darkness. That really scared me. And I so desperately wanted to hold somebody's hand. I can't tell you how strong that feeling was. So emotional. I need to hold somebody's hand. I didn't care whose or what. I needed to feel the warmth of somebody's hand in mine. Then I start thinking, of course, being a guy, I grew up in the South Bronx, my father being First Nation. You grow up in a way that you need to be able to survive in the street. So we call it being tough. At this point, I think it's ridiculous, but that's how we grow up.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Then my father being First Nation and having a sense of, as a provider, they're called life takers. So that means that they hunt, they bring food home, they protect their family, they keep everybody safe, right? But he had that concept like in steroids. He was on steroids on it. So he felt that men don't show emotion, can't cry, can't hug, we can't say we love things. We're kind of like, best way I could describe it is almost hollow, empty. Yeah. Just like a shell. And so that's how I grew up. And here I am looking at this thing and I'm afraid. And I'm like, I'm not supposed to show fear. And that's exactly what happened. I started thinking about my dad, who had died 5 years earlier. That said, Christine, I just said, I can't show fear. I can't. And I actually felt my body get stiff. Didn't show fear. And that decision changed the flavor of my experience. Because now I'm trying to pretend that I'm tough. I'm trying to show no fear. And I'm trying to do something that I really instinctively don't want to do. But I was taught to be this way. So I'm taking that route. And I did. my body actually stiffened. Then I started thinking, okay, what if God is real? What if the Creator was real? And then I start thinking, well, maybe if I call out for help, maybe if I bargain, if I say, God, I'm going to be good, I'm going to change, I'm going to be a better man, I'm going to be completely different, I promise. And I did. You know, I started bargaining is the way I look at it. Saying, God, if you're real, if you intervene, if you change this from happening, I promise I'm going to be a better person. Then I waited. And I waited and I waited, and it felt like I waited a long time, but it was really not. Only about 20 seconds. In those 20 seconds, I could feel my heart beating really fast. It was racing. And they gave me all these medications to help me breathe and all this stuff. And it's kind of chaotic, but I was like immune to all that. I wasn't aware of it. And then suddenly I become aware of the IB drip. And I had a couple. And I hear the drip, and it sounds like a splash. It's like I'm hearing water hitting a tin roof, like splash, splash, splash. And it made me instantly curious, like, why am I hearing that? Right? It was strange. Mm-hmm. Then I'm looking at the wall, which is about 10, 12 feet away, maybe 14. And my vision is so acute that I could see the grain in the wallpaper. And I'm going to myself, wow, what is going on? So I'm a little curious. And at the same time, I'm terrified of dying. And I'm waiting for God to say, yes, I'm going to intervene. I'm going to stop this. Don't worry, you're going to be fine. But that did not happen. And those 20 seconds took forever. And then what happened was this. Your heart is racing and you're on monitor, so you can hear it. Beep, 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 beep. Until I heard it just go flat. And it went beep, 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 beep. And I could feel that. Felt my heart actually stop. It's like a thump. And then my head is saying, oh my God, that just didn't happen. But I knew what it meant. And I got angry. I got angry at God, and I said, God or Creator or whatever. I knew you weren't real. What am I doing? Why am I praying? Why am I begging to you? I knew that you weren't real, and fear came back. And then I'm looking at the door. So right in front of me is the door. So the bed is facing the door, and there's a clock on top of it. That's why I know the time so well. Yeah. And I'm looking at the door, and I see a shadow standing there. That shadow doesn't do anything. It's just there. And I'm thinking and saying to myself, okay. I had to explain to myself and make it okay to die. So the way I did that was to say, there's no shame. You're not quitting and you're not giving up. Because we grew up in a world where we couldn't quit and we couldn't give up. So I had to tell myself that I wasn't doing that, to give myself permission. Then I said, realizing that I couldn't stop this from happening, that it's okay to die. And the instant I said that, the shadow moves. Shadow moves moves around the people. Just reaches out and touches me. In the minute that I felt that touch, I could feel ease flowing. This tremendous sense of peace, calm, and love. Everything felt so perfect. Good. I didn't feel sick. I could breathe better than ever. I felt perfectly fine. I keep feeling this wind, and I got long hair, right? So I'm laying in this bed, and I'm thinking my hair is just blowing in the wind, and I had this vision for a second, right? Next thing I know, I feel like I'm lifting. Then I'm in the corner of the room, and I'm watching what's happening. And I'm looking at myself, but I'm thinking, how can I see myself? How am I thinking? How's all this happening if I'm everything I need to do that is in that body over there, and that body's dead? Then I asked myself, or I said to myself, really, that's me and I'm dead. But if that's me, then who am I? Who am I? And that became one of the galvanizing moments for me in a life changer. Who am I when I realize I'm a lot more than this body? Then I hear this voice on my left. She says to me, "Lay, visualize your body as if it was a car, except that that car has like 5 million miles on it and can't fix it anymore. You gotta say goodbye to your body." Now, I just finished saying goodbye to life. That was a really painful experience. Now, this voice is asking me to say goodbye to my body. So I look at my body, something magical happens. I looked at my body, and for the first time in my life, my body was perfect. That body had been perfected, had been a wonderful, wonderful vessel. It allowed me to do whatever I wanted to do, even if it wasn't the wisest thing, it didn't stop me. And until I spent it, and now this body couldn't continue, and it died. It gave itself up for me. That's how I felt. Sacrificed itself for me. And then I started having these little memories. And you would imagine that when you have these memories, you're going to see these moments in your life that were crossroads. You get married, you see your first child, when you get out of college, you do this, you do that. And I'm looking at it like that was not what was happening. So Christina, the first thing I see is me holding my little brother's hand. I'm about 4, he's about 2. Then I see somebody give me a little hug, somebody give me a little kiss on the cheek, I could take a deep breath, hear the sound of a bird sing, I could see the sunrise. I was getting all these little moments of life. And what was amazing about it was that it's moments that I experienced almost every second that I was alive. And I was too busy to realize or see them or be aware of them. I missed it. And I felt a sense of loss for a second. Oh gosh, I miss life. And now it's too late. But I continue to look at my body, and I continue to realize how perfect that body had been. And I finally looked at myself, and I could say that I loved who I had. I always hated who I was. I hated looking in the mirror. You always hear people saying, a lot of times they say things that are not good. They make you feel bad about yourself and stuff like that. And so that's how I perceived myself, the way that people said, what I heard. And when I looked in the mirror, I always was, maybe we're the harshest judge of ourselves. And I was never good enough. Now I felt like I was good enough, and I felt really good about that. Then I hear the voice say, "Okay, Jose, we got to keep going." And I was able to say goodbye to my body in a loving way, a very gentle, kind, loving way. I started moving with this angel, I guess would be the best way to describe it, this being. And we went through the doors that I was looking out during my whole experience. And I see like this hole in the ground, big black hole, and I keep walking and I fall in. And I feel like a sense of something being torn off me. It's the first time I feel that. Any kind of discomfort. Then I land in the bottom, and she says, "No, we got to keep going." So I keep going. The same thing happens. Another fall in, feel that discomfort. This time, when I hit bottom, if you could visualize a basketball or a ball, and I'm right in the center of it, hovering, and all around me is color. That color is moving, and it's alive. It's talking, and I hear like a million voices at once saying, all I hear is like a chatter. Shh. And then I feel like a movement. So I don't know if I'm moving towards the color, if the colors are moving towards me. But I'm moving towards the color. The next thing I know, I'm in the color. And I become the color. So I get a sense of red, blue, all the colors. I feel what they feel like. And then while I'm there, I'm getting like blueprint of how to paint. This is how you're gonna paint. This is how you're gonna do this. How you're gonna do that. So it started simply with a black canvas. You start with a black canvas. It told me why. So look in the sky at night. You look in the sky at night and you see everything out there. In the blackness, it looks empty. But in that blackness is everything that you need to make all the stars and everything else that you see out there. So there's no such thing as emptiness. You're gonna start in that blackness. That's full. So it has its own energy, its own life. And then whatever you put on top of that, it's going to get its life from that. So I kind of got it, and I keep moving through the colors and finally come out on the other side. And I guess this is what we would call heaven. So I feel like I'm in heaven. I'm like, oh gosh. And what I see is a beautiful mountain range. And in front of it is this beautiful forest. Now, to me, that's striking because I'm from New York City. And the mountains over there, just a bunch of buildings, and
Right.
there's not a lot of trees.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Florida, that's completely flat. So I'm looking out at this and I'm saying, wow, how beautiful it is. And the first thing I notice is the shadows the clouds are making on the mountains, the side of the mountains, and it's so contrasting and beautiful. And there's all kinds of wildlife moving around and stuff. And then I start moving. Then I think about my children. And I ask, what's going to happen to my kids? And I hear a voice say to me, don't worry, you can see them from here. The minute she said I could see them, that was like incredibly peaceful. It made it so peaceful, so calm. And then that sense of love and stuff like that that you feel there. You're not judged, you're accepted, you're embraced, you're equal. And I realized that I'm kind of like hovering. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, I'm flying. And the voice says to me, that's normal here. And I heard the voice say that. I'm like, oh. Then I start moving towards that tree that's in front of me. Beautiful tree. And I can't imagine how long it's been. And as I get closer to the tree, what happens is I become the tree. And what I'm experiencing is oneness. I could feel the tree drinking the water from the Mother Earth. I could feel the water. I am the water. I could feel the leaves. I could feel the birds on the tree. And I'm experiencing them as if I am them. I could feel that the sky, the air all around me. You become all these things. And as I move past the tree, I could see the Mother Earth. I could see the stones on the ground and the rocks. So, and all of a sudden, stones have a heart. The soil has a heart. Everything's alive. Nothing is not living. And it felt so, I don't want to use the word humbling, but it feels so small, but so big at the same time. That makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I keep moving. And I'm looking up at these mountains and I'm finally saying, I want to go up there. Start going up there. Then I can see the snow on the top. It's beautiful. And I get to the top of the mountains and then I'm looking out to the right. On the right, I see the sun. And it's almost as if I'm looking through a telescope because I can see solar flares coming out of it. But I realize the warm breeze is coming from there. And I'm thinking, even there, like a scientist in a way, I'm thinking, well, that warm air is giving me lifting me. That's why I could fly here, right? And then I look to the right, to the left, and in the left is a beautiful beach. It's like a U-shaped cove. And I see a man knee deep in the water. He's holding 6 children in one arm, his right arm, one child on his left. And I'm thinking, should I go towards the sun or should I go towards the left to see who that person is? In hindsight, I'm thinking if I go to the right and I go towards the sun, I probably don't come back. But I decided I wanted to find out who this person was. So I decided I'm going to go to the left and I'm going to go down instead of up. And I go down. And I get closer to this man. And I get about 10, 12 feet away, 15 feet. It's hard to gauge distance. And then all of a sudden he turns around. And when he turns around, that was my dad. And I started thinking right away, I'm going to be able to do here what I couldn't do in life. I'm going to be able to talk to my dad. I'm going to be able to tell him what I felt, how I felt for the first time. And I'm going to hug him. I know we weren't supposed to hug, but I'm going to hug him. And just so you understand the dynamics, my father was an alcoholic, so he used to drink a lot. And he was very abusive. There was a lot of fear around him. Whenever he was home, we were like really scared of him. When I was about 12 or 13, I started to kind of stick up for my mom. And so he and I were always bashing heads. And our relationship was very distant. Couldn't get close. And his belief that men don't hug and stuff like that didn't help. So, and emotions were like a no-no. Don't express emotions. And I'm looking at him there. And to compound it, 5 years before that, I had a sign to take him off of life support. His body was riddled with cancer and there was nothing they could do. But I signed the document. I took him off of life support, but the guilt that I felt was very profound. I couldn't get away from it because of the teachings. He taught me never to quit and never to give up. And I felt like I didn't give him that chance. I quit for him. And he never had the opportunity to make that decision himself. So I felt really guilty. So there was a lot of guilt wrapped around his death. And this ridiculous thought that if I didn't sign those papers, maybe he could have survived. I know it's not real, but it was real to me then. Yeah. And when he died, it wasn't like I said to him, Dad, I love you, give him a hug, none of that. I couldn't do it. So the feeling was like I had lost my opportunity to ever communicate that. I'll never be able to do it again. And here I am looking at him and I'm like, I'll be able to do this now. And I could hear him in my head. We're talking, but not the way I'm talking to you. And I hear him in my head and I could hear him telling me, I love you, I'm proud of you, and all these things. It was very emotional, still emotional for me. And I remember saying to him, Dad, I love you, and all those things, right? Things that should happen so normally in life. And here I am, dead, finally doing something I should have done in life. And the regret for not doing it was finally being alleviated, being removed. And I forgave him. He forgave me. That was like super important. But more important, when I hugged him, first time in my life, I lived his life in seconds. I know exactly what he had been through. I know why he couldn't be this way, why he couldn't be that way. I finally understood why, his struggles, how hard his life had been. And in my anger and my own frustrations, I never thought about what his life was like. I never cared. It was what was happening right now in this moment and how he's making our life miserable. And no thought of him that way as a human being. And anyway, I lived his life in seconds, and to be in another person's shoes, we talk about that a lot. Oh, I've been through that. I know what your life's been. No, I don't. We could experience the same thing together. I'm experiencing it different than you. You can never know exactly what that person feels like. We might be close. We might think we know, but we don't know. And I didn't know for sure. And all the guilt that I had was dismantled in that hug. And the forgiveness that came from myself. It was me forgiving me. It was Jose saying, you're free. And the freedom that I felt. I have no words for that. There's no words to describe that freedom. It's just an emotion. It's so powerful. I feel it as an emotion. It's so good. Feels so good. It makes me feel like crying, but it's not from sadness. It's just so good.
Yeah.
And I finally let go. And this self-forgiveness already has taken place. And he looked at me, and my father says to me, Jose, you need to go back. I looked at my father and say, hell no. No, you got to go back. And I actually said it like this. No way, Jose, I'm not going back. Right? He looked at me, said, you don't get it. Then I started feeling like a pressure in my chest and something pulling me from the back. One second I'm with my father, the next second I'm back in my body. I'm open my eyes and I see the doctor doing the compressions, and she just moves her head back. I think I surprised her, but I did notice the stress in her face, and she was trying so hard to keep me alive. And then I went back to my dad. They were my father, and I say, like, we're back at that. You got to go. I don't want to go. You got to go. I don't want to go. And then he looked at me and said, Jose, I'm going to make a deal with you. My father was always making deals. So I looked at him and I said, okay, tell me the deal. I'm just waiting to hear the deal, right? And he said to me, if you go back, I promise I'm going to come and get you. In that space, in that time, I'm thinking, wow, no way I could turn this down. I have to take this. And I said yes. And instant, I thought, yes. I could feel that tug. I would pull back. And I lost my dad again. For the second time. That went through my body. And I open my eyes and I'm stable. They stabilized me. And first two thoughts are very simple. The first one is, was I such a bad human being that I just got kicked out of heaven? The next thing, that profound sense of oneness that I was experiencing, now I was inside this body again, and I felt trapped, felt separate from everything. Felt incredibly enough, I'm going to use the word strange, even though I lived my whole life that way. It felt very strange suddenly, not to be able to have that access. I stay in hospital for 3 months. About 6 weeks when I'm able to talk, took about 6 or 7 weeks before I could say anything. My cardiologist is there, and I looked at him and I said, you know what? I think I went somewhere. That's all I said. This guy looked at me and said, oh, no way. The heart, your brain is still alive for 2 minutes after your heart stops. You got DMT, you got all these drugs we're giving you, and I'm looking at this guy like, wow, he's right. None of that was real. I didn't see my father. That was all in my head. That made me feel really bad. Yeah. Just crushed whatever hopes I had, because my prognosis was you're never going to get out of here alive. And every time I hear that cold blue, I escape to that bold color. There's where I felt comfort. No judgment. I felt real, safe. And in a hospital that long, there are a lot of cold blues and a lot of people fight. And some of the rooms I'm in, some of the walls were glass, and you can see what's happening next room. And I saw a lot of people lose that fight. Then the fear for me was that's going to happen to me again. I'd escaped to that border color, and there's where I found comfort and safety, and I felt some kind of protection. And my resilience started to rebuild itself. Because when you're in the hospital, every day your hope and resilience is pounded out of you. It's like it gets less and less and less. And then you begin to believe what they're telling you. I'm not going to get out of here. I'm going to make it. I'm never going to go home to be with my family again. And those thoughts really begin to fall, drop. By the time you know it, you're at the bottom. The only thing that kept me going was that border color. Mm-hmm. That painting behind me is what I saw there, one of the. Mm-hmm. That's what saved me, in my opinion, being able to go in there and escape the harsh reality that was around. So I went there. Every time they hit the cold blue, never I felt any stress, any anxiety. Left the hospital 3 months later. Now I leave the hospital, I'm addicted to a whole bunch of medications. Right. So I came out of there an addict. And I didn't know I was. How subtle that is. Becoming an addict is very subtle. It's not like it says, okay, you're an addict today. You wake up and you say, I'm an addict. Very subtle. I didn't. And anyway, I decided I need to get mental health because the doctor said that was all in my imagination. So I had to be crazy. None of that happened. And I never heard of NDEs or anything like that. It wasn't my world. It wasn't something that I would ever be. You know, if you ask me before that, I would say, oh, that's just a bunch of people's head because they're afraid of dying. It's whatever, right? So I would knock it. And I start to get mental health. So I go, actually 5 years, I went to get mental health. But it took me 3.5 years of mental health to say to somebody, I had this experience. I died, but when I died, I had this experience. Could that have been real? Or am I crazy? That was the simplicity of it. It wasn't even like anything really heavy, but I couldn't talk about it. My family knew that I had died, but they didn't know that I had an experience in any way, shape, or form. And they already thought I was already weird because I was talking about spirit, and I never spoke about stuff like that. It was all science and math. So my kids were like, where's our old dad kind of thing? He's, you know, we don't know you talking about spirit and things like that. We know you talking about science and stuff. Yeah. So they would ask me, where was I? that made me feel worse, because then I'm thinking, oh man, there's something really wrong with me. Anyway, 3.5 years later, I'm sitting there in an office, and I have this amazing therapist that she looked at me and she said, I'm not supposed to do this. So she's sitting like we are, facing each other. She sat right next to me. She took my hand. She took my hand. It's like I went through a time portal, and she took me right back to the hospital. I'm laying in that bed, and I'm terrified, saying, somebody please hold my hand. And she did that. And it was like she opened up the gates. Flood came. I let go. I told her my experience for the first time, what I just shared with everybody. And she looked at me when this is over, and she told me something that changed my life. To this day, still, it was very simple. She said to me, Jose, my struggle was believing. I'm waiting for her to give me a pill to take all this away from me because it wasn't real.
Right.
And she looked at me and she said, well, Jose, I'm going to tell you something. If you go in this world and you're there all the time, you will get medicated. And you're going to lose whatever you got from that experience. Right? So if I go into that and I stay in that world of that experience, they're going to medicate me and take it away. Then she said, if you stay in this world, you're going to lose that experience. Then she put it to me so simply. She said, well, what would you rather believe? That when you die, somebody's going to switch you off like a light bulb and you're going to turn into nothing. Darkness. You'd rather believe that your father's going to come back. What do you want to believe? And when she put it that way, it was like, oh my God, such a no-brainer. Such an easy. So easy.
Yeah.
Of course I want to believe there's something more. Of course I believe. I want to believe my father came. And then I that instantly made me believe it. And it just changed my life. And it speaks to believing. And if I didn't believe in myself, now it took me 3 years to get off the drugs. It took me 3 years. It sounds easy, but it's a battle. And I'm very grateful for the mental health professionals that helped me get through that, and the people that work with me that helped me get past that. And then the awareness that this had been real made it so much easier for me to let go of everything else, all the drugs and all that, all the guilt and all the shame and all the stuff that I was feeling evaporated, and I was able to set myself free. So that is basically my experience.
Thank you. That was so powerful. So many parts just touched me so deeply. I even was crying a few times during your story. And I think what stands out the most that I want to highlight is the full circle. And you just named it again, but when you were in the hospital room before you died, there was guilt or shame, and then guilt, and then fear. And as you went through your experience, you had freedom until you came back. And then your journey back here to accepting that that was real led you back to that freedom and freed you from the shame and guilt. Like that circle of release just is so powerful on this side, listening to your story, that I don't even know what to say about it. It was
Well,
just
yeah, I mean, it's really about understanding who we really are.
yeah.
So that moment that I saw myself out of body, I was standing in the corner of the room and I said, that's me, I'm dead. But That's me. Who am I? That's the question.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yes.
And I know I'm so much more than this body. This is something that God, the creator, the God of your belief, lends us so that we could experience this physical realm. And it's borrowed. It's only for a short time. And what it made me aware of, Christina, was how valuable life is.
Mm-hmm.
Because before I didn't, it was like you're moving through it, you're competing with everybody, you want to move up the ladder of success, whatever all these things are that we think have value, suddenly had no value to me.
Yeah.
What had value was the moment.
Yes.
And I realized that I'm always in the moment. I'll think about tomorrow, I'll think about the past, and a lot of us live in the future or live in the past. So our problems consume us. Everything that happened already is eating away at us. Or what we think is going to happen is eating away at us. Like, oh God, tomorrow's going to be a rough day. I got this, I got that. And we're never here.
Yeah.
And this is where I live. I don't live over there and I don't live back there. I live right here, right now, always. We're always right here in this moment. That's the only aspect of life that I know. I could think about the future. It'll eventually get there. I could think about the past. I know it happened, but I don't have to let it rule my life.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then not seeing my little brother, not understanding that little kids, not understanding that breath, not understanding a hug. All these little things that happen. Look outside, the sky, how beautiful. The experience I had over there exists here. All of that is right here. I didn't see anything that was not here.
Right.
But over there, I actually saw it. Here, so often, I could look at it, but I don't see it. And that is the trick about making life special and wonderful, knowing all that stuff that's around you, all that specialness. How long it took Mother Earth to become a place that we could live. I look at that as a gift. Something was thinking 5 billion years ago when Earth started to make this a place where we could live. That's how special we are, man. We're like, and we can't see past it because we're worried about, oh, that guy has a bigger car than me, or he's better looking, or what? Who cares? At the end of the day, that doesn't matter. What matters is what you're going to take back with you. And I know I can't take anything physical with me, but that only leaves me one thing: memories. We make memories every second that we make them good. Bad memories can't move with you. That's what was being torn off from me. That was that discomfort.
Yeah.
Nothing bad, nothing negative can move across that realm. That's why that sense of love and perfection is so overwhelming. It's breathtaking because that's all there is there. There's nothing else. Fear, negativity, all that is from us. We create that here. That stays here. Can't. It's not from there. We're from there. So when we go back, we have to go back in pure form. And that's, I guess, part of that transition. But it makes me value life more than anything. This life is so precious. This is so special because this allows my body to live. It's a gift and it's free. And believe me, when I couldn't breathe, I couldn't do that. I couldn't take a breath of air in. I couldn't let the air that was spent out. and I suffocated. You have no idea how amazing that breath is and how we never think about it. And I'm just going to add this. Think about life. I say it happens in a moment. We're always in the moment. When I'm born, I take my first deep breath. My mother's not breathing for me anymore when I'm born.
Right.
When I die, I take that last gasp. In that one breath, I live my entire life. Make that, honor it, make it what it is. It's a gift, it's special. And I work with a lot of people that are struggling, and I don't understand why they can't see their own beauty, why they can't see their own grace, why they can't see why they're here. They want a reason. Why am I here? What? You're here because you're here, and your job is to live life and love. That's it. There's no purpose. There's just a purpose. I'm going to cure this. No, your purpose is to live this life the best way you can, make it as magical as you can. Then when you go back, you're going to take some magical memories with you.
I felt all of that in all the parts of your story, especially the memories and how they were about the sun and the bird chirping and holding your brother's hand. And I am just so honored that you shared your story with me today, just as you have been, and all of the things that you have created and are creating from your experience and what you've learned. And I will have you back on the show so we can talk about different things that you're up to here in Phoenix, where I live. And but for now, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And how do people find you? How do they get in touch with you if they want to work with you or chat with you?
Okay, so you can find me at the www.innerimmersion.com. That's the mindfulness practice. It's an amazing program. And then you can find me also at the JoseHernandezFineArt.com. See some of the stuff that I saw on the other side. And the magic about it is when we light this art up that's behind me, it begins to move like I saw it. And it has a tremendous impact on people. Just seeing those colors move, it's like they're alive, and it connects you to something that we typically don't connect to. But anyway, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah.
Christina, this is great. I can't wait to do another show with you.
Yes.
I mean, we share so much in common, and
we really do.
Yeah.
We really do. So yes, that
and just the fact that I'm working in Phoenix.
Episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we will schedule that and get that for everyone to hear about what you're doing with your business and how it overlaps with a lot of the stuff that I've learned as well. So Jose, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Christina. I'm looking forward to it.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.